Thank you very much. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with two very funny people for a conversation about the present, yes, including you, Alex, the present and future of comedy. Phoebe, let's start with you.
Sam.
Thank you. We're just getting to know each other. The name of your book and show is Everything is Trash.
Yes.
Is there anything right now that's not trash?
I mean, it's hard some days to wake up and find like the good moments. But you know, I've been watching a lot of garbage TV that's gotten me through it. So it's like helpful, like reality TV's good. I'm running now.
Phoebe just completed a marathon, the Boston Marathon.
I am a hero for doing that. No, I think you know, the world is the older that I get, I'm turning 40 this year, y'all. The older that I get, the more I'm just sort of like, oh, the world has always been sort of in this kind of trash, like, multiverse. And I'm just more present. I'm more, you know, present of it now than when you're like younger and you're bopping around New York and you're like, my dreams, you know, like that's what you're like focusing on. And then you get older and you're like, oh, there's a whole world that's kind of like, you know, hurting. But I think for me, it's someone, I think Alex can attest to this too, like doing comedy has been one of the most sort of like freeing, joyful things that I've gotten to do, especially, you know, pandemic until now. So I think stand-up comedy for me is like the big non-trash thing in my life. Yeah.
Mint chocolate chip ice cream.
That's your pick?
Yeah, for non-trash, it's the best thing by far.
Is there a brand
Yeah,
that
what
you
brand?
endorse?
Is there Grater's Ice Cream of Cincinnati is by far the best one. Oh, some Midwesterners there in the crowd, but yeah.
What about Jenny's ice cream?
Horrible. Absolutely.
That is, honestly, that's so outrageous that you would say
Excuse
Jenny's
me,
ice cream is horrible.
here's my problem with is this actually how we want to start?
I'm gonna pull back.
Okay, fine, there we go.
No, let's get into it. Listen, people pay to hear our opinions on ice cream, okay?
Here's my problem with ice cream now. And I don't mean to sound like very like old-timey, like the way God intended, but like here are flavors of ice cream that are flavors of ice cream. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, mint chocolate chip, salted caramel maybe, Rocky Road, cookies and cream, right? But the flavors of ice cream at Jenny's are like Earl Grey, blue cheese and pear, strawberry balsamic. These are salad dressings. And so like, I am not, genuinely, go into Salt and Straw, they're bringing Salt and Straw here and they should, like it's an invasive species. Like it's kudzu that's made its way to New York City. Like these newfangled, I went into a Salt and Straw in LA and I went to the guy, I said, do you guys have chocolate? And he went, kind of. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we have a goat cheese with a cacao nib. And I was like, in Jenny's is part of this craze where it's like, we have 3 flavors this month. It's like a men's cologne by Armani, a tonka bean duck fat, and Simon and Garfunkel. And you're like, it's parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. It's a sprinkled sea salt over the, like, we need really good regular ice cream flavors again. And that is why I'm running for president.
I just want to say there could be diversity of flavors in ice cream. It doesn't just have to be the traditional flavors.
Okay, well, now I feel uncomfortable.
Exactly, there we go. There we go.
Okay.
Making white men uncomfortable is my platform for president. So let's go. Let's go.
Yes, Phoebe had a podcast called So Many White Guys.
I did,
welcome.
Yes.
And speaking of ice cream, Alex, you just finished a 6-year run of your show.
Yeah.
I didn't think we were going to talk about dairy products together. It's a show about an Orthodox Jew who attends a white nationalist meeting.
Me, I'm the Orthodox Jew.
Don't spoil it. After each show, you talk with audience members. You wrote a wonderful piece for Time recently where you said one person asked you, what should be the limits of our empathy? You're still struggling with the answer to that question, I think, but what's your best answer to it?
It depends. I don't know if I said this in the piece, but depends, right? What should be the limit of your empathy? Do you want to be correct or do you want to be productive, right? Those are two things. Frankly, our elasticity should be endless, right? We should be infinitely patient in terms of the limits of our empathy, right? But like, if you want to actually reach someone, if you want to actually affect change in their life, you actually stand a much better chance by extending your empathy and trying to bring them and trying to listen to them without trying to convince them, trying to understand the experience where they're coming from, and yeah, I think, by the way, it's a thing that people are desperate for. I think Americans have this desperate desire to not just be empathized with, but to empathize with others. And I think there actually aren't a lot of outlets for that. So yeah, I think the answer changes based on what your goal is.
Phoebe, does comedy play a role in understanding empathy?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think if you're making people laugh, they're listening, and they're receiving. So now maybe their hearts and minds are like a little bit more open, or they're seeing like a perspective like, oh, that's funny. I never thought of it that way. Okay, maybe there's something to consider here. So I think comedy is a great tool to also shame people if you want to, but try not to do that. But also like bring people together and make people feel good. And I think we're sort of definitely missing a lot of levity right now. Everyone's just like yelling and I'm right on this point. And it's like, okay, everyone can be right and then nothing gets accomplished. So I really love comedy being that conduit to, force openness and change.
On the everyone yelling at each other problem, Alex, part of your show, you talk about creating a list of anti-Semites on Twitter.
It's still there.
I was gonna say, do you keep up with the list, and how are they doing?
Well, the issue was when I created the list in 2018, I really had to go digging, and now it's my main feed. So it's pretty, by the way, I'm not an expert on Twitter or whatever letter it is this week, but I will say that it used to be, you really had to go looking for the anti-Semitism on Twitter, and now the algorithm seems much less fun, and sort of right out there on the surface. But yeah, I still, although I'm an anti-Semitism minimalist for the most part, like it needs to be really, really obvious to me. Usually people are like, I don't know. I went to go see Farrakhan speak a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, well, this is anti-Semitism, but like, all right, all I'm saying is we used to have great anti-Semites. Okay, all right.
This is my fault, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's
like
clean
Henry
this
Ford
up.
and Walt Disney, these were anti-Semites, like these were great. The anti-Semites, they created jobs and they revolutionized industries, and now we just sort of have like Kanye, like, but not even great, like Kanye now. So like, we need a better class of anti-Semites is what I'm saying. Also why I'm running for president. No, I'm just kidding, But yeah.
Phoebe, your brother's a member of the Iowa House of Representatives still, yes?
Yes.
And you've canvassed for candidates in the past since Alex is here campaigning. Would you run for office one day?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
There's no reason. Like, the problem that I have is like, well, true.
You should run for office.
I'm sorry, let me finish.
Sorry, Phoebe.
I think the problem that I have is like anyone who becomes like sort of, famous or notable or whatever, they all think, well, I think it's time that I roll up my sleeves and like change things. It's like, I think like Matthew McConaughey was thinking about maybe, I was like, you make movies, babe, just stick with that. That's it. Like, I think we need to have people who really have a working knowledge of politics, especially on the local level. Like, you really need to understand like how like your community works, and there's so many ins and outs, and I think just being someone who people like is not a reason to run for office.
You seem like you'd like to say something.
No, if Matthew McConaughey ran for office, his campaign slogan would be, right now things are all right, but I want to make them great, great, great. All right, not as funny out loud as it was in my head.
Listen.
I would love to see Matthew McConaughey run for office. And also, I would love to see, okay, fine.
No.
I think a big problem that we have is that people who are impressive don't want to run for office because it seems like a job for medium talents, frankly, right? Like, with due respect to the politicians who I'm sure spoke this morning and will speak in the afternoon, but like it does largely seem like a job for losers. And so I genuinely think that we used to have great minds run for public office, people who were public service minded, people who were like truly worthy of like a sort of, and the people that would work for them, like Ted Sorensen. Can you imagine like Ted Sorensen working for, I'm not gonna say a specific name because that would be not a great thing, but can you imagine that like the people that used to work in public service in the like 60s and 70s doing that now? Like, a big problem that we have is a talent deficit. Like, we don't have, millennials, a lot of them are too smart to run for office. And so like, we have losers in positions of power when we could have great minds. And I think it's a big problem because, like you've correctly identified, lots of lots of people are like, this isn't worth the trouble. It's a job that's filled with the craven and the power hungry. And so like, this paradox creates a situation where like, we don't have many visionary leaders, and it's a real issue. So you should run for office.
Thank you, Alex, but I'll pass.
Okay. Settle for running the Boston Marathon, you know.
I ran it for charity.
I know, it's
so,
amazing.
You know,
It's one of the longest marathons, 26.2 months.
Yeah.
Really, really.
It's one of the long.
They're all the same.
Yeah, I was like, they're all
Not
the
a great
same. You know, that's.
Guys, come on, TIME100.
I don't know what's happening. I honestly.
Listen.
Making it in the field that you both do is quite difficult. And you both have made it, so congratulations on that. Was there a moment when you finally said, Phoebe, like, I've got this? Is there a moment that you look back on and say, like, I have finally reached this level that I've been working really hard to get to?
I mean, I would probably say when Jessica Williams and I got Two Dope Queens on HBO, because first of all, I just really loved the podcast, and when I started out doing stand-up, for me, I was like, the gold standard is getting, you know, a special on HBO. So when that happened, I was like, oh, this is like really cool and exciting. And so I really just felt like all our hard work paid off, and like to just have it be like two Black women doing that, to me, it just is a very special feat. So I think that's probably, you know, the first time where I was like, oh my God. And then the second time was like when I was able to pay off all my student loans. I was like, I'm not in debt. Life is looking different, bitch. I'm getting guacamole all the time, honey. So it was great. It was great.
Alex, have you had your guacamole moment?
Meeting Margaret Atwood a little while ago, that was pretty cool. I don't know that there's such thing, for me, I don't know there's such a thing as making it, but I always want to be a comedian. Since I was a teenager. And so I get to do a job that I really like, and I have many, and what's great is comedy is a relatively young art form. So a lot of the people, or like at least modern contemporary comedy is very young, so I've gotten to meet a lot of my heroes. I get to share the stage with people that I grew up, like Phoebe was someone, when I was starting, Phoebe was already great. And so at open mics is someone that I would, you know, sort of look up to. And so I get to share a stage with people that I really admire. And when I was doing the show downtown, although I will say this, when my solo show, the one that just went up on Max, started downtown, it was supposed to run for 3 weeks, and then it ran for like a year and a half. And it was this really special moment because, as you guys can probably tell, I'm a person who requires a little bit of explanation. And so I'm not immediately like gettable. And so I think the 90-minute sort of offering of
I don't,
what?
okay.
What?
I don't agree with that.
Oh, really? I think that most people are like, what's going on here? But like, to do a show that is truly an expression of yourself and to have people respond to that is a really incredible thing. And like the comedians that I admire, a lot of the heads of my Mount Rushmore, like Seinfeld came to the show and Steve Martin came to the show and like, and Billy Crystal came, and they all gave notes, and they were all very kind, and so like that to me was like a really special experience. I don't know that I'll ever have another one like it, but it was really cool. So,
what has it been like to leave that experience behind?
Sad, but not for, you know, I made this. There's a misnomer that comedians do everything by themselves. And I made my solo show with a bunch of other people. Mike Birbiglia, who we both know, produced it, and all these different comedians offered notes, but I made that show with my best friend, a guy named Adam Brace, who was my director. I worked together for 11 years, and Adam died like 5 weeks before we started on Broadway. And so leaving the show behind is kind of like, it's my last best work with my closest collaborator, and it's had this tremendous resonance, which I'm really proud of and pleased with. But in some ways, I guess that's it for that conversation with him. So yeah, that's truly the bitter part of the bittersweet binary. But I'm pleased that it lives on in such salubrious form as an HBO special. But I do miss the guy, and so when I did it for the last time in LA, I really felt sort of like, you know, I did it until 11 months after he died, because that's how long you say Kaddish in the Jewish faith, and I thought that was 11 months to the day was the amount of time that'd be appropriate to do it, my friends. So like, it's really sad to leave it behind, but it's been a beautiful experience, and people are now finding it on television or streaming, and so that's been its own beautiful coda to it. Sorry to give such an earnest answer. I really wish I had a shitty one to give, but yeah, sorry.
Phoebe, you work across so many different media, right? Podcasting, books, film, television. Is there one that feels like the best representation of your comedy?
I mean, if there's only one thing I could do for the rest of my life, it probably would be writing, just because I just have always loved writing. Even like when I was a little kid, I would write short stories, and so I think that just best sort of like represents like my brain and sort of my sense of humor and my vulnerability. And I think stand-up is a close second, because you can write a joke in the morning and then go do a show at night, and sort of fumble your way through and figure out like what's funny, and it's great, and that's always exciting, because like I've been doing this for 16 years, stand-up, and I'm like, you never really know, like even if you like write like what you think is like the best joke, like you kind of don't know until you say it in front of other people, if it's really going to hit the way that you want it to hit, and so that sort of like element makes it a close second to writing.
Alex, you said recently you think a lot about truth in comedy.
Mm-hmm.
What did you mean?
I'm not a fan, of truth in comedy. I think that I think artistic movements happen not to give a boring granular answer, I think a lot of artistic movements happen as a pendulum, right? Like first you get the earnestness of the 70s, and then you get Bret Easton Ellis in the 80s, and then you get the earnestness of David Foster Wallace reacting to that, and then you get the irony of the two. And so like, I think that in comedy we've gone into there was a confessional arms race that was sort of happening. And so I like more of like, I like material that restores a little mystique. So I'm hoping that whatever show I do next will have a little bit of that, like, my next show I think is gonna be about Israel and Palestine. So I like to restore a little bit of, wow, it's great, thanks. Yeah, no, I agree. But it's gonna be called career suicide, obviously, but no. But like, feel my publicist off stage biting her fingers, but yeah, I think more elusiveness in comedy is what we want. But there's this often mocked thing about emotional truth in comedy, but I do think that that's the most important thing. I think trying to communicate a thing that's a little more subtextual to an audience is really important.
Do you agree with that?
I mean, I think whether you're absurdist or you're pulling straight from your life, there is some element of truth in comedy. Like, I don't think you can necessarily separate it. If it's not grounded in sort of anything, then it's like, I mean, is it even really that funny? Probably not. So I think it's just all how people interpret it and go about presenting it. Like, are you trying to actually have jokes, or is it just like you're just doing a monologue with not really many punchlines, and like, okay, sure, that's probably not specifically comedy the way that we, have been raised to think of it, so.
I'm just worried about what's gonna be interesting to our audiences in 5 years. I'm worried about, because it feels like there are two teams in comedy right now. It feels like there's team long form and team short form, right? There's team Instagram, TikTok, and then there's team like specials, solo shows, live stuff. And I think that right now we're giving audiences lots of comedy. And I'm wondering what's gonna be the thing that breaks through the noise and the thing that's elusive, and I think communicating truth in a more interesting way. Obviously, I think all comedy should have truth in it. I just want, like, Steve Martin's comedy, it's not autobiographical, but it has a sense of authorship that's distinctly Steve, right? Like, there's something that's really unique. Even Tom Lehrer's songs is going way back. Like Richard Pryor, like Bill Cosby, well, I mean, but like, yeah, but they had truth to there was truth in their aesthetic, right? There was truth in the thing that they did. And I just worry that in order to break through the noise, we're giving audiences lots of noise. And I think in terms of like being obsessed with just autobiography when everyone is kind of a comedy brand via their own Instagram or Twitter, I think is going to require a little more elegance, a little more deftness of touch, and I'm worried about the sort of linear narrative that everyone seems to be concerned with offering their audiences. So all I'm saying, to me, it's more of a craft thing than anything else, but it is a pressing craft thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's also just a matter of, I mean, there always seems this moment where people get concerned. I'm like, the pendulum always swings a different way. So to me, I'm very much like, I think everyone just has to kind of do what they think is funny and just go from there. And then like something will happen the way that there was like Nanette or the way there was like Whoopi Goldberg. Like I'm personally not that concerned about like the state of comedy. Like something great is gonna like break through and like change things a little bit.
That's what I'm talking about, because those were both mold breakers, right? Like Nanette totally broke the model, and then everyone's like, well, the thing to do is Nanette. And everyone's like, and Whoopi was like one of the first solo show artists, period, to go to Broadway. And Mike Nichols brought this thing, and it was really prolix. It was really complicated, Whoopi's show. And so like, and people took the wrong lessons from Whoopi Goldberg's show. After that, there was this glut of solo shows for like 5 years in the early 90s, and none of them were good. And so like, with the exception of Bogosian's stuff, because Bogosian's stuff was different and interesting. And so like, I am really worried that we're gonna learn all the wrong lessons from things that are successful now, and just like, but you're like, we're saying the same thing, but just in different words.
Yeah, I just was gonna say, just, you know.
Sorry, Sam. Jesus Christ,
just,
you get two comedians. What?
The light.
Oh, we're comedians. We don't care about the light.
I was gonna say, historically, there's a thing that hits and people want to copy, then another thing hits and people. So it's just like, don't waste your time being worried. It's gonna be fine.
Right. Do you want to ask a wrap-up question?
Alex Edelman, Phoebe Robinson, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank y'all. Let's do a little selfie real quick.
Oh my God.
Okay,
We're gonna do it.
Okay.
Smile.
Smile. Okay, cute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.